is that I've been at Microsoft 16 years. I worked on a bunch of things. I was project manager for Windows 2000, which alone means that I have to atone for a bunch of sins for many, many years. The classic one there being NIMDA. Okay, so NIMDA was this thing. You got to remember, Windows 2000 was all about 1999. We were all drinking Internet 1.0 Kool-Aid. You know, we're all going to be rich. We're all going to help the Internet developer. So we did stupid things. We turned everything on by default. And hi, David LeBlanc, who's a man that's coming up next, and he's a very good speaker, so I'd suggest you hang around for David to talk. But in Windows 2000, we did things like we turned on the Internet printing server on every Windows Server system. Now, since August 2000, when a little thing called NIMDA came out, you know, I've spoken to probably about 2,000 customers, and in that time I've found 2 that ever put internet printing in production. Everybody was vulnerable. About, you know, less than a very small percentage were the people that actually ever used it. One of those was Arthur Anderson, so therefore they can't really be valid. I also was the project director for Windows XP. I started atoning for some of my security sins with Windows Server 2003, which was our first release where we did what's called the security development lifecycle. And if you don't know what that is, that's what we do to actually try and develop secure software. I think that everybody in the biz these days will agree that Microsoft has made some significant leaps over the last couple of years. Hopefully you don't disagree with me there. I think you should agree with me. If you want to know more about SDL, check out the book that David LeBlanc and Mike Howard wrote. Check out Mike Howard's blog. There's a bunch of stuff that goes on there. So today, I'm going to talk about a bunch of stuff we're doing in the next release of Windows Server, which is called Windows Server 2008. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've gone to look in the system, how we've changed our engineering process, how we've been able to update the SDL and be able to go and do things, our process to go and find things that we think would be vulnerable. Then I'm going to talk about a version of the system, or an installation option called Windows Server Core, which is our really cut down version of Windows, and our learnings around some of the things that came up there. And then I'll talk about some of the stuff we've got to go and do. Okay? So there you go. There's my little summary. As you can tell, I'm really fancy on PowerPoint, and I'm really good at doing drawings as well. So the first thing that we had a big realization around Windows Server 2003, and specifically when we released SP1 and we did this thing called the security something wizard, security configuration wizard, which after installing everything you get to run this wizard and it'll turn off all the ports. That was kind of the dumb way of going and looking at things. The smart way is actually go and install it and make sure there's nothing open. And there's nothing open by default. So in Windows Server 2008, there is nothing turned on by default. You go and poke that thing from the net and you're going to have a really boring time because all you're going to be doing is poking holes and you're not going to find anything. Sorry about that if the people who really want to go and do things. By the way, I've got my flashy Andrew Cushme helped me with this because he's much better at PowerPoint than me, but I've got my flashy little thing that I do, which kind of could symbolize a target, but it's not intended to go and do that. So, you know, one of the things that we also looked at is, besides having this outer ring that is always protecting the system, you go and say that there are none of the extra services going and turned on by default. You know, if you want, for some reason, like me, because I run server on my laptop, I want to run the ATI driver, which is relevant for there, I got to go and find that thing. None of that stuff is there. Sorry about that. It doesn't make it simpler. It makes it harder. But oddly enough, I think most people run their servers in a black room and they don't really care about having this high-end video driver on their system. So we turn everything off. When you do things like join a domain, join a Windows Active Directory domain, you're going to turn on a bunch of extra services because there's more stuff that's there. That will open up some interfaces, but really our job is to be able to protect those interfaces and make sure that they're not open. The firewall is turned on by default. That is the Vista firewall. All our inbox stuff that we've shipped it goes and plumbs the firewall. We've documented how for application vendors how to plumb the firewall. You got to do that with your application install. Sorry, It's the way it is. You got to do a harder piece of work. Sorry about that. Life wasn't meant to be easy, as someone in Australia once said. I have this croaky voice, which someone told me before was a Las Vegas accent. But we won't go into the reasons for that. But yeah. So one of the other things is, server is not installed to go and do things like play a game. Okay, server is there to go and provide infrastructure support, to provide stuff for your network, stuff for your infrastructure. So we have on top of that, we have the idea of roles, whether that's an Active Directory role or a web server role or a DHCP DNS server role, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of them that come along there. Whenever they get installed, they've got to go and plumb the firewall to be able to go and expose the ports and expose the protocols that they actually ship across the wire. The real rule that we tried, and I think we've succeeded this time, is that every time you've got to have a really low attack surface. You've got to have no attack surface to start with, and then when you install the thing, you want to be able to go and do that. And we go and do things like, we improved the stuff that we do to go and do the /GS switch when we compile stuff, so that you're going to have some automatic protection for buffer overflows. We've got to be able to go and do that because we make the thing that's generic, and oddly enough, the experience that's probably in this room is not very common in corporate America. People turn on their systems. We've got to be able to protect them by default. It makes it harder for the people that are the super high-end people, but we figure that they can work out ways to be able to go and automate their systems. We've built in a bunch of stuff around heat protection and doing things like NX and working with the processors to be able to go and do some lower level protection. Last year at BlackHat there was a talk about ASLR. Doesn't roll off the tongue all that well, but ASLR is allowing for any time you reboot the system, you're going to be automatically able to move stuff around where they load in memory, so that someone goes and finds a vulnerability or finds a vector to be able to go into the system. They're not going to always be able to go and get to offset X to be able to go and find the kernel and be able to go and do code insertion in that. So every time the system's rebooted, the kernel's loaded to a different place. Different parts of the system are loaded to different places. Building in protection of the system and be able to go and say that there are layers to be able to go and do that. We've also gone and put in BitLocker for data drives. Oddly enough, you got BitLocker on Vista. The right thing to go and do is to go and protect your system drive, because if someone lifts your laptop, and maybe you or I would go and want to go and set it on data drives and go and set it up that way. The right thing is to go and turn it on for the whole system for the Vista type user. For servers, you don't really care about the system partition that much. You really care about where your data is, and you really want to be able to go and protect that. The other thing that I'm going to talk a little bit later is about Windows Server Core. We've also gone and built in a bunch of protection through what we've done in engineering the product. And frankly, I would strongly recommend, if you're developing, especially if you're developing system level type software, to make sure your teams grok the idea of how they're going to be able to build secure software from day one. If you don't have that as your check-in gates, if you don't have that as protection to your systems, you're making mistakes. I go and have a look at, the latest versions of things like Visual Studio, and I'm like, kids these days, they get given every free thing in the world to be able to go and work out when they have a problem in the system. But the reality is that, that allows for you to be able to detect when there is problems in your code, and be able to go and show up when you've got a BO in your system. And you really want to be able to go and do that. And you want to train your developers, the people who are your software is as secure as your end user, your end developer. Okay, you can go and build in protections. We've built in multiple levels of protections. We go and run tools across our software before anybody goes and checks in. But it all comes down to the mindset of the end developer or the end designer of the software. And we've been really going and working about raising that with the developers in Microsoft. Hopefully you're seeing that with the sort of people that you meet at this conference. We've also built a lot of fuzzing tools, and we've been fuzzing any of the protocols that are opened up to the world, and going and having a look at the things that, when you have a sort of vector that's a little bit different on a protocol, what you can go and do. And finally, the obvious thing that we've got to go and do is we've got to go and do a bunch of reviews. The market, I will admit here right now, the marketing, actually it wasn't even the marketing guys. One of the program managers in the security team drew a slide that had all these nice PowerPoint pretty boxes and stuff, and I just thought it was lame, so I drew it on my whiteboard and took a photo, and that's what I put in my slide. So there you go. This is true using PowerPoint the correct way. What do we do for our process? So you've probably got some people, there's probably some people here, actually I know there's some people here who have been part of the team that have been going and checking for things on the system, going and working for the last couple of months to go and work with us to do various levels of checking into the system, whether it's code reviews, design reviews, all that sort of stuff. I think that officially they call BlackHat their ship party, so we'll all crawl inside a gin bottle tonight and have a good time. What we did to go and have a look at the system is that we looked at the stuff that really gets exposed. Okay, we had a look at the stuff that's going to get exposed out to the net, going to get exposed out to broader parts of systems. We went through selecting those. We did a base level set of code analysis around that, a set of design questions, and that really led us to go and say, there's some stuff that's high risk. Okay, there's going to be some stuff that's low risk, and there's going to be some stuff that you don't really care about on server. You get on Vista, you get all that cool whoop-de-woo stuff where all the windows go and do all that sort of stuff, and, if you're on Linux, you can go and do the whole cube thing and all that sort of stuff. I write server software. I don't care about that crap, okay? I care about the ways that our customers are going to expose their systems to the net. I care about being able to go and easily or help them protect those systems by default. So we went through a process where we go and do a bunch of design reviews around the software. We then go and do a bunch of code reviews and go and find out where there might be some problems that are coming along. And we do a deeper level of protocol fuzzing. Because these things, if they're going to sit on the net, if they're going to be a DNS server that's sitting on the net, they're going to get attacked. If they're a web server, they're going to get attacked. So especially if you have a web server that's running, say, Microsoft.com, it's going to get attacked. It's going to get attacked by people in this room probably, but it's going to get attacked. For all the other stuff, we've got all this sort of standardized ways of going and looking at the system. We've got our core SDL practices, and as I've said, the book is actually a pretty good book. Mike Howard's blog is a pretty good place. I don't know if you've got a blog, David, but... No, you don't? Okay, David LeBlanc has a great blog. I've never read it. But he's got a bitchin' haircut, yeah. You can see that guy driving a Camaro any day of the week. And then we have a bunch of... come on, okay. I'm ragging on the guy. You're going to laugh. And then we have a bunch of centralized tool runs that we go and run across the system. As I said before, if you've got to go and do a check into our system, your code is going to get analyzed to see whether there are things that either we're going to talk about here that we've detected previously, you're falling into patterns that aren't particularly good, and we're going to flag it, and we're going to go and, before it gets checked into the source base and gets built, we're going to go and flag it and make sure that we go and do another round of review and sit down and talk to the developer about it. This, we think, is the model for us to continue going and building software. When we went into in 2002, when we first created